Hi, I'm David. The title of this course is The Fundamentals of Jazz Improvisation. There are three primary components of jazz: improvisation, rhythm, and phrasing. This course is designed to further understand and learn basic improvisational concepts utilized in the performance of jazz. Listening, writing, and practicing will be key elements to the understanding and learning process. If you have perfect pitch, or good relative pitch, then you're already well on your way to becoming a successful improviser. As far back as late 1890s, a new sound of music was being created by former ancestors of African American slaves, residing in Louisiana, Missouri, Texas, and other places in the southern part of the United States. This new sound was called the blues. This music form became the foundation of jazz, as well as the prime source of rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and country music. By the 1930s, jazz was the most popular music in America. So the focus of today's concept will be the blues scale, how it's constructed, and how to apply it. So let's take a look. C major scale. It's a diatonic C major scale. Now compare that with the blues scale. There's only 7 notes in the blues scale, but 8 notes in your diatonic major scale. Between the first and the second note of the blues scale, we have a minor third. Then from the second to the third, we have a whole step or major second. And then we have the half step or minor second between the third and fourth note. Third and fourth and fifth note, another half step. And then we have another minor third. And then a major second or whole step. So essentially we have 2 minor thirds, we have 2 major seconds, and 2 minor seconds. And that's how the blues scale is constructed. Now you can start on your key of the instrument that you play. For common purposes, we're going to start on C. Now it's a good idea that you practice all 12 notes. Number 1, to develop an ear for that scale. And then number 2, develop the technique to play that scale. So it is a good idea, or I strongly recommend, that you practice that formula for that scale on all 12 notes. Starting on C or wherever you want to start, we use practice on all the 12 notes. And so forth. Continue that, and for that purpose, you will start to develop the ear for the blues scale as well as the technique on your instrument. Practice slow until you can practice and play it fast. Blues scale on a major triad, blues scale on a minor chord. The blues scale is extremely flexible. You can use it against a C major chord even though you have a minor third for your first 2 intervals. So the major chord has C as the root, E as a third, and G as a fifth. The blues scale has an E flat as the third, but it's the second note of the scale. We go to minor. Now the E flat is in common, but it doesn't affect the musicality of it. So the blues scale can work on major, Now, the dominant seventh chord has 4 notes: C, E, G, B flat. Still using C as our foundational note. Now we're going to make a chord out of it. Root, C, E is the third, G is the fifth, and the seventh is flat, B flat. The beauty of the blues scale, you can take any position of that chord and use the blues scale formula, and it seems to work. Let's start, not this time on the root, but let's start on the third. But we'll keep the formula for the blues scale, so the notes will change. Starting on the third of the dominant seventh chord, going to the fifth of the dominant seventh chord. And then lastly, this flat seventh of the dominant. So applying the blues scale formula starting on each note of the dominant seventh chord, and they all will work. The notes change, but if you memorize the formula and you have it in your ear, you can start on any one of the notes of the chord and it will work well. Blue notes and the diminished seventh chord. Now, we don't always have to use all 7 notes of the blues scale. Let's start with the diminished seventh chord. We have C, E flat, G flat, and the 7th note is a double flat 7. We'll call it A natural, which is essentially A natural anyway. So we'll just use A natural as our chord. 7th note. The root, C, the 3rd, E flat, the 5th is a flat 5, and the 7th is a double flat 7, which puts us at A natural instead of B double flat. It's the same thing. If we apply the first 4 notes of the blues scale, starting on each note of the diminished 7th chord, you will see how well it works. Because once again, we don't always have to use all 7 notes. So if we just take the first 4 notes of the blues scale, that's starting on the root. If we go to the 3rd, if we go to the 5th, still works. If we go to the double flat 7 or the A natural, just using the first 4 notes. The first 4 notes really identifies your theme or your pattern as a blues pattern. The notes will change if you try to do the whole scale, because you're keeping the pattern of the minor 3rd, major 2nd, the half step, the minor 3rd, and the major 2nd. You're still keeping that pattern, but because you're starting on a different note of the chord, it just changes your notes. So that's why it's extremely important to really practice initially the blues scale using all 12 notes, so that you can easily move around from a diminished 7th chord to a dominant 7th chord to a major chord to a minor chord. And you'll have the facility, and you will hopefully have developed an ear to play the notes from the blues scale. Okay, standard rhythms applied to blues or jazz, or both. Primarily, the phrasing is legato or slurred. Rarely is it staccato. Staccato means very short, choppy, because then it doesn't have a feel. It doesn't have the swing feel. Triplets, 16th or 8th notes, dotted 8th notes and 16th are commonly written. Some arrangers, some composers will just simply write straight eighth notes, but they will put an accent on every other note to get the same swing or feel of the phrase. So let's go back to the blues scale, and I'm going to do legato phrasing in triplets. Take the first two measures. Now I'm going to take the dotted eighth and sixteenths and do the scale. Legato phrasing. Substitute notation will sound the same, or should sound the same. It's just the understanding that this is jazz, this is blues, so we're trying to get the right feel, the right phrasing. So what the composer arranger might do is make an accent on every other note. Not the first one, but the second one. Not the third, but the fourth, and so forth. And it should sound the same as the dotted eighth, sixteenth. That's how it would be interpreted if we're dealing in a jazz setting. 16th notes. Now, if we didn't have these slur marks over these 16th notes, this phrase would sound as so. Doesn't quite have the same swing or feel to it. But if you see how I applied the slur marks, you will notice the difference in how it sounds and feels. So this is a substitute writing. The composer arranger will just write straight 16th notes and negate the slur marks. But that's with the understanding he knows who's going to be playing it, and the players know that, okay, we're doing jazz, so let's make it feel right. Let it swing. If I ignore the slur marks and play it straight, it will still sound pretty much like the slur, but it won't quite have that feel. Listen. So you can hear the difference. Now here's another rhythmic form. We put eighth note rests in between the eighth notes. The first written way is what I played, or you can also find it written as dotted eighth, 16th once again, with the understanding of the interpretation, because we're doing jazz and blues. I'll play the second staff here. I'll play the first one. So you can see the interpretation should be the same. It's just written differently depending on the arranger or the composer. And a lot of times the conductor will see that and instruct the players, okay, you play it like so-and-so. So-and-so being with the right swing, a little more swing. Or they'll actually sing it out how they want it to be played. So this is how it should look either way. This is the first half of lesson 1. We will go into further detail with chords and how to apply the blues scale in different situations and chordal structure. But we know how to formulate the blues scale, and we will practice all 12 notes so that we will have the technique and the facility to move around and use notes of the blues scale with different chords.